have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and how it affects all of our lives in so many ways. Boy, have we got a lot to talk about tonight. So many examples of how the character issue impacts us all so greatly in so many areas of our lives. A number of things to talk about, a number of things to share with you. And, of course, being an open mic live program tonight, ready to take your questions, hear your concerns, take your comments. If you want to join the conversation, please give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm going to apologize in advance here for having a pretty raspy throat tonight. I do have a bit of vocal cord dysfunction, as I mentioned before, and today it is really acting up. I'm not sure whether it's a combination of allergies and the other nerve issues that I have affecting my vocal cords, but I'm a bit raspy tonight. I'll do my best to articulate well and to be heard, but bear with me if you have any difficulty listening to the sound of my raspy voice today. And once again, if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. Well, what a week it has been. Lots in the news, lots to talk about, lots of examples to share with you and to discuss about how the character issue impacts us all. It impacts us all individually and collectively as a society. It's an issue that we must do something about. And it's an issue that I have written about for almost 19 years now, a process that I have studied for almost 30 years. And I really feel strongly about it, strongly enough that when I was working on a book about the greatness of this great country of ours and what really makes it great, and that being the character issue. You know, when free people are left to their own devices, when they're left alone, when government does not intrude too heavily in their lives, when they're not restricted or restrained, when they're guaranteed the maximum opportunity to prosper, really decent people who hold certain values and ideals dear and who live out those ideals in practice, those people tend to build great societies. And when we act as we have been in the past few decades as entitled, spoiled brats who have lost our way and who have reneged on the principles that made us great, then we only invite government to rein us in, and we only invite other restraints on our freedoms, and in the process, this great freedom that we enjoy, the thing that makes it all possible, is in danger of being snuffed out. And all of it is due to the fact that we no longer basically know how to behave. We've lost our way, and it shows in the deterioration of our great institutions, and it shows in the breakdown of our families. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about tonight. But first, I have a couple of announcements to make. I want to say, first of all, a big thank you to those who are helping carry the message that I sought to inspire in song back in 1999 at the turn of the new millennia when I penned the music for what is appropriately titled Anthem for the Millennium and is affectionately known by its subtitle, America, My Home. And my wife collaborated with me on the lyrics for this song, and it's meant to inspire folks out there to honor America's best ideals and to live up to its creed. And there's nothing that I don't know why it is. I mean, really, I never thought that I would compose anything musically. I've always been kind of musically inclined, but I never played an instrument very well. And now that my voice no longer works, I don't sing anymore. But I've always liked to inspire people in song. I think music is a way to really reach people's hearts. It always, when lyrics are properly sung and with feeling and emotion, it's a way to grab people's attention in their heart and convey a message like no other. So it just really, it does my heart good. I don't know what it is, but it just really does my heart good when I get another request from somebody who has either gone on Google and Googled Anthem for the Millennium or America, My Home, or has Googled patriotic songs about America or great patriotic songs or new patriotic songs, or especially if they've gone on YouTube and searched for the same things. Because if you're searching YouTubes and you search for patriotic songs America or patriotics or new patriotic songs or great patriotic songs, right away on the first pages you will get links to videos and performances of America, My Home. And so people do that and they hear it and they're touched by the song and they're inspired by it. And when the patriotic season rolls along, Memorial Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, when that season rolls along, I start getting requests for people to perform the song. And I can't tell you how much joy this brings to my heart when this happens. It just really edifies me. I get probably 2 or 3 dozen emails every week from people telling me that they have purchased my books, either In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, or Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, or the Judas Syndrome, which I wrote for the Christian faith community. I get literally dozens of emails all the time, people telling me how much they enjoy my work, how much they've enjoyed visiting the blog at manipulativepeople.com. All these things edify me, no doubt. But I don't know why it is. Something touches me particularly when someone is affected by the song. I don't know why that is. It does my heart good because to think that somebody else wants to carry the message in song and touch somebody else's heart and encourage someone to wrap their hearts and their head around an idea that it's up to us to make this grand experiment in freedom work. It only works if we're decent people. That's when it works. It can't work when we're not. It just cannot work. The founders knew this. And if there was ever an example of it, it would be the events in Baltimore this past week or so. And I want to talk about that tonight. And many of you may have some thoughts about it as well. And if you want to join the conversation, it's one of the things that we'll be talking about quite a bit tonight. We're not going to make this a political discussion. There are too many folks who fuel the horrendous polarization that already exists in our great country by taking a political stand on one side or the other, with eyes closed and ears closed to the other side. There's always a kernel of truth in either side, always a kernel of truth. And we can't meet one another. We can't have a fair conversation. We can't have a really meaningful discussion of the issues that really need our attention with an open mind and with the mindset necessary to really solve our problems if we come at our problems from political sides. We don't need to take sides in the issues. So I'm not going to come at the discussion from that. But I really want to talk about the character issues at play because there are plenty of them. There are plenty of them. There's so many examples that can be seen in the events that have occurred this week. And so we'll take a close look at them, and I'm going to talk about some of the character issues that just kind of jumped out at me and really fit so nicely with all of the things that I have been writing about for so many years and talking about. And I really encourage you, if you have an opinion to share yourself, or if you have a bone to pick with me, maybe as you listen to me discuss these issues tonight, you won't agree with what I have to say. That's fine. I'd like to hear what you have to say anyway. Give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, what a week it has been, what a week and a half or so. That's not the events in Baltimore are not the only news item that I want to talk about. There's plenty else to talk about. And actually, before I get to Baltimore, I want to mention just one other little thing that that brought to mind to me the character issue once again. I was touched by, my heart went out to the folks in Nepal who were the victims, the innocent victims of the terrible earthquake there, the avalanche that resulted, of the terrible decimation of homes, the tragic loss of life. It looks like it will be well above 7,000 before all is said and done. This is really a tragedy beyond measure. And we're fortunate, we human beings are, because these kinds of disasters that it's really no one's fault. It's just nature rearing its ugly head as it does from time to time. There's no rhyme or reason to these things. These kinds of catastrophes are relatively rare. We're blessed. Yes, I live in the heart of Tornado Alley, so things like severe thunderstorms and tornadoes and things like that, during the season, they're not all that infrequent. And of course, if you live along a fault line, earthquakes are always a possibility. Volcanoes are a possibility. This certainly is not heaven on earth here. This is no Eden or paradise. The earth still, from time to time, has catastrophes visit it, but they're relatively rare events. There are so many more times, should we put it that way, so many more times that the disasters that we experience are really things that we bring upon ourselves, things that we could easily avoid. We could avoid those fatal collisions if we didn't drink or drive recklessly. We could avoid those near misses and damages if we didn't allow ourselves to become distracted while driving. We could avoid the hardships of a broken home if we really took our commitments seriously, took our character issues seriously, put our families and our love interests first. If we took our vows seriously, we took all of our commitments seriously. There are so many things that we could avoid. There are so many more tragedies that enter into our lives because of the ridiculous things that we let ourselves do in our weakness of character, which is why I sound the trumpet so often on the character crisis and what we have to do to resolve it. So my heart goes out to folks when, through no fault of their own whatsoever, tragedy strikes. But here's the dilemma, folks. Here's the dilemma. We are a generous lot. The government announced that it was going to send a few $1,000,000 that we don't have, that we actually borrow from the Chinese government and other people willing to buy our debt. We send money because we're supposedly a rich country, when in fact we're the largest debtor nation now in the history of the world. And by unbelievable measure, we sent a few $1,000,000 over to Nepal as a government, but the American people are far more generous than that. They open up their hearts and they open up their wallets and they donate like crazy. And I'm one of those folks who wanted to do my part and did my part. Not a huge, I don't have millions to send, but I did my part. But here's the dilemma. There are so many organizations out there that purport to do charitable work. There are hundreds of them, so-called not-for-profit institutions, all of which purport to take care of those in need in one way or another. And for the most part, the administrative costs and the systemic costs associated with running these enterprises eventually get so high that very few dollars that you donate actually get to the people that need your assistance. And very few dollars actually end up going for the needed supplies that folks in disasters really need. And I was just getting ready to open my wallet again when I read an article that really indicted the giving community, the charitable organization community, for how little relief was actually getting through. Once again, this happens time and time again. And once again, the character issue visits us. It's not just a matter of organization. Sometimes it's a matter of greedy hands and greedy pockets. And sometimes these institutions, although they start well, sometimes these institutions get big, their executives get overpaid. That's a character issue too. And so you don't know. You get a little uneasy. You certainly don't mind being generous, but you don't want to throw money away either. I don't like throwing money away. I don't know about you folks, but I don't have money to throw away. I don't have money to burn. So I had to do some research, and I was fortunate. I came across two really good sites on the internet that rated and showed how they rated charitable organizations. I did find some sites that were nothing more than that were nothing more than fronts for their own organization. You know, sites purporting to do a job. You know, it's like these phony sites that purport to find you the best insurance policy by being objective, and then they route you to who they already planned to route you to. You know, and then they take a cut for doing that. You know, once again, the character issue rears its ugly head. If we can't be better than that, folks, we will never be great, and we will keep getting into the doo-doo that we get into. But I digress just a little bit. But I did eventually find a couple of sites that appeared fairly reputable in finding the organizations that would be the most likely to get the maximum dollars through. And then I felt more confident making my donations. But the fact that I even have to do that, the fact that I don't have to read every fine print before I sign on the dotted line, before I part with some of my money. The fact that I even have to do that is a testament to this crisis that we're in, that we've lost the ability to trust one another, that we've lost the ability, certainly institutions that have been around a long time and that once had a stellar reputation, that were always there and could always be trusted to deliver. I'm not naming names. I told you I always leave politics out of this, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. There are some big names in the charitable contribution business. And it's sad what they've turned into. Huge bureaucracies, huge executive salaries, huge operations that do much more than they were ever really intended to do. And then when something comes up and relief is really needed, and you send that $100, maybe $5 gets to where you want it to go, or buys what you really hoped that $100 would buy. It's a travesty. It's a travesty, and it's a reflection of our character crisis. It's just another one. It touches us all. That's why the title of this program is Character Matters. It matters. It matters in everything. It matters in every facet of life. It matters to everybody, for everybody. And, you know, I'm gonna go to my grave sounding the trumpet. I'm going to try and inspire as many people in song. I'm going to try and touch as many people with my written works. I'm going to keep blogging at www.manipulative-people.com, one article a week, and counseling with 2lsresource.com, www.counselingresource.com, and my website, drgeorgesimon.com, drgeorgesimon.com. I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can. because character does, in the end, matter. It matters more than anything else. And before we move on to the discussion of the events this past week and a half in Baltimore with Mr. Gray and the ensuing riots and the police officers involved and the prosecutor who's now brought charges. Before we get involved in that, once again, I said it's not going to be a political discussion. We're too divided to foster any more of that kind of thing. But before we get into that, I want to invite you once again that if you want to join the discussion, if you have an issue you want to talk about, you have something you want to share, you have a question you want to ask, maybe you've read something on the blog, maybe you've read one of the articles, or maybe you've seen one of my videos on YouTube, on my YouTube channel at Dr. George K. Simon. Give me a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call and be happy to patch you into the discussion here on Character Matters. Well, lots to learn from the events in Baltimore this week. Now, last week I mentioned, I think for the first time, that we need to be really careful. We need to be really careful in rushing to any kinds of judgments on both sides. There is so much that's probably not going to be learned honestly about this tragic event that happened to this young man. Now, Mr. Gray, by all accounts, was a troubled young man. He had had several arrests. He was, of course, no saint. But that doesn't mean that after catching sight of law enforcement out of the corner of his eye and deciding to run because he didn't want any trouble or didn't want to be suspected of any trouble or didn't want to be caught. Maybe he'd actually done something. Who knows? But whatever the case may be, and whatever kind of trouble he had in the past, he certainly did not need to die. Of that, there can be no doubt. And so therefore, the need for a really serious reflection on why these kinds of things continue to happen could not be greater. And make no mistake, there are character issues involved. Now, I told you I would not take political sides, and I'm not going to. Because there are always bits of truth, kernels of profound truth on each side of the story. For example, on the law enforcement issue, it is true that law enforcement officials are among some of the most unsung heroes out there. Many do their job conscientiously and with a great deal of composure and compassion, and with a lot of honor and integrity. And many do that despite a lot of thanklessness on our part, and sometimes a lot of hostile treatment. They have to put up with angry, spiteful drunks who they've pulled over on the side of the road, who spit at them and kick and scream, call them all kinds of obscene names. use profanity. They have to deal with all kinds of stuff. And they get paid pretty poorly. We're pretty thankless to the folks that keep us safe. So that's one side of the story. But then there's the other side of the story. There's the side of the story where there is a culture. There is a culture within many organizations, not just law enforcement, within many organizations, to CYA, to cover your butt. You do something wrong, you renege on a principle, you go against a protocol, or you just simply exercise bad judgment. Maybe you're well within the confines of your policies and procedures, but you still act a fool. And you know you've acted a fool. And then something really bad happens. And then the covering starts. This happens. It does happen. I know that it happens. I know firsthand that it happens. I'm not saying that it necessarily happened in some of the high-profile cases that we've seen over the past several weeks, past few months. But there is good reason for people to be suspicious that it happens. And I've heard a lot of folks say, with respect to this one incident here that happened in Baltimore with Mr. Gray, that we'll never know what happened to Mr. Gray, for sure, inside that van, because there were no cameras inside the van and there were no officers inside that part of the van. And the other person who was in the van was not in a place where they could actually witness anything. They were behind a partition so they couldn't see. So we've been told that we will never know what caused Mr. Gray's death. But I'm here to tell you we're asking some of the wrong questions. And we're looking down a blind trail. You know, there's this thing in there's a principle in science called Occam's razor. Some people call it the principle of parsimony. And it goes something like this. I'm oversimplifying now a little bit, but this is how the principle works. It's that generally speaking, given all the possible explanations for something, generally speaking, the simplest possible explanation is usually the best and usually the most correct. And when you look at what video we do have, we don't have video of what happened prior to when Mr. Gray was led off in handcuffs to a waiting police van. We don't have video of that. And it's a shame, because that's where we really need video. But if you look carefully at the video, if you look very carefully at it, and you see him being kind of dragged, and you hear him shouting out in pain. Now, I know you've heard people discount whether or not he was in genuine pain. He may have been exaggerating for the purposes of eliciting sympathy. But when you look at everything all together, the fact that he appears to be dragging his feet, the fact that he appears to be resistant to getting into the van in such a way that they have to lift his feet and put him in. And then when you also consider that his spinal cord is severed, that enough force occurred in his neck, that his spinal cord is nearly completely severed. When you put these things together, the simplest explanation, and we're going with Occam's razor here, the simplest explanation is that when they're dragging this guy to the wagon and he's writhing in pain and he appears to have difficulty moving his legs and he can't even get in the van without being forced in, that his spinal cord injury has already occurred. So why are we looking in the van? And why are folks directing us there? Why is our attention even being directed there? You know, misdirection is a great tactic that magicians use. It's one of the greatest and oldest manipulation tactics around. You know, if you're watching my left hand, you don't see what my right hand is doing. It's that simple. I get you looking over here, and I do something over there, and you don't see it because you're looking over here. Great tactic. It's how people get manipulated. So, you know, the likelihood is that we are never going to get the truth. The other likelihood is that there were political considerations in bringing such an indictment so soon. I'm not saying that an indictment shouldn't have been forthcoming. Matter of fact, there's enough that went wrong, and there's enough that was done wrong. There were protocols violated. There was enough that went wrong, and enough was done wrong, and there was enough bad, sorry judgment exercised that these guys needed to be held to account. And it's about time. So, even though I do think that there were political considerations in bringing charges so early, I think the considerations were maybe the streets would calm down. I may think maybe another consideration was maybe now someone who has a track record of being critical of the department and how it operates and of the biases that exist, and they do exist, by the way, and not just along racial lines, not just along racial lines. Now, I'm not minimizing that, folks. I'm not minimizing the part that race might play. But there is a kind of an us versus them mentality that develops between folks who are on the line every day in this battle against the severely character disturbed among us, who have absolutely no compunctions about their behavior. There is an us versus them mentality that develops. It's almost kind of natural that it develops. But it does develop. And it fuels an attitude that makes it all too easy to make those rash, impetuous, emotion-charged judgments that impair doing of a conscientious job in law enforcement. It's the same kind of mentality. It doesn't have to exist in just law enforcement. It's the same kind of mentality that fueled. Oh gosh, what's that guy's name? George. Goodness, down in Florida. I'm forgetting his last name now. He's been in trouble for his hot head and his temper many times since. Trayvon Martin was his victim, but I can't remember the perpetrator's name here. At any rate, it's the same mentality that fueled his comment about, these guys always get away with it. When he sees somebody lurking around that he thinks looks suspicious, and he's determined that they, quote unquote, are not going to get away with it this time. This rush to judgment, this us versus them mentality, well, it's present. It's present on police forces. And it's pretty prevalent. And in a way, you could see logically how that's developed. But the folks we put behind the badge are supposed to be better than that. They're supposed to be operating under different presumptions. And they're supposed to take extra care to protect the rights even of the guilty. That's how our system is supposed to work. We're supposed to be better than those regimes that simply target people and brutalize them. We're supposed to be better than that. But that, folks, takes character. And to foster character, we have to have institutions that remain strong, like family, like values based on faith or certain principles, certain philosophies. You can even be atheistic and have your philosophy to live by. But it still all hinges on character. And we have lost our way. And we're paying the price. And that's why from time to time, our streets are filled with discontented folks. Now, of course, there's no excuse for the opportunity some hoodlums took to vandalize and take advantage of the opportunity. But, it's a true travesty what's happened to the institutions that once fostered character. And as I said many times on this program, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. We can't keep our institutions strong when we fall into such character malaise, when we fall into such attitudes of entitlement, such attitudes of permissiveness, such attitudes of heartlessness, absolute heartlessness when it comes to the value of human life. Such shamelessness. We can't build institutions that will stand up with those kinds of attitudes. And of course, when those institutions aren't there, or when they break down, that have typically fostered character, then of course our character collectively and individually breaks down even more. So it is truly a vicious cycle, with poor character causing a crumbling of institutions, and a crumbling of institutions causing a further deterioration of our individual and collective character. It's that simple. We can't go on like this. We can't. That's why I keep trying to inspire us in song and with my work, my written work. We just can't keep going like this. Now, to get back to the incident in Baltimore, I've heard so many things about the mother who was captured on video, who went after her son, whooping him upside the head for getting out in the streets. One, she didn't want him out there on the street. She wanted him safe. Two, she didn't want him picking up a brick or doing anything that was going to get him in trouble. Three, she didn't want him identifying himself as one of those folks who wanted to rabble-rouse. She didn't want that mask on him. She didn't want him dressed. She didn't want him to identify himself with those characters whom she didn't hold in high regard. So some people were praising her for this effort. But then there's the other side of the story. This woman who has a family of children by several different men and no stable male role model to influence the young men in this home. She may love them dearly. But you know, men are wired, I just got to say, I'm a psychologist. You take issue with me if you want to. We just happen to be wired a little bit differently. For years, we tried to tell everybody, we tried to convince ourselves with phony research that it's all learning and it's all culture. And if we were all raised the same, we'd all be the same. And the research has told us soundly what our mothers and fathers knew many, many ages ago. Men are different from women. For the most part, they have a little extra of this thing we call testosterone. It predisposes us to be a little bit more feisty. And it takes a lot to civilize us. It takes a lot to get us to channel those innate aggressive energies in a civilized way, in a way that doesn't do harm either to ourselves or to other human beings or to society at large. To channel those aggressive energies into creating things, into building things, instead of destroying things. To channel those aggressive energies into making things better instead of tearing things down. And it takes leadership to help show us the way. And as great a job as our mothers do, trying to teach us about those things, we also need positive role modeling from our fathers. Because it's other men that we identify with when we're growing up. And if the only models that we have for channeling our aggressive energies are those folks in our streets, those members of our gang, or those other guys that we hang out with who are doing the things that some of them do, if those are our only role models, then there's going to be trouble ahead. That's why we need families. Take issue with that, if you will. Take issue with that. If you want to, call me, 718-717-8296. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you don't take issue with that. Maybe you want to second that notion. I'd be glad to take your call as well at 718-717-8296. We only have a few minutes left to the program tonight, so now would be a good time to call in if you want to share something, or if you want to add something to the conversation, or if you want to ask a question, or maybe if you have a disagreement, give me a call. But folks, we just have to do better on the character front. We have to. We have long since lost our greatness. We haven't always been great. I've said this many times. We have had plenty of periods in our history where we really rightfully could and should have held our heads in shame. Especially during those really hypocritical times when we had certain folks talking a good line about the evils of slavery while themselves holding slaves. It's just not true that we have always been great. We haven't always been great. And there were times during Prohibition where crime and drugs were far bigger problems than they even are in some places today. Machine guns on the streets of Chicago. People dying left and right. We've had some truly horrendous times in our history, times when we rightfully should hang our heads low in shame. But we've also had periods of great step up to the plate character, where we rose to the occasion, where we embraced our ideals, where we knew what we stood for, and we were willing to put our lives on the line to sacrifice for it. And we had just come off one of the greatest generations in our history, when our elders betrayed us and the Vietnam War began, and we became probably one of the most dysfunctional families in our history. The inmates took over the asylum, so to speak. We rebelled, and big time. And we rebelled against just about every institution that we hold dear. And we thought we could reinvent everything better. And what we did was usher in the age of entitlement and relativism, and it's only gotten worse. And only now, only recently, only in the last few years, as we've begun to recognize the depths of the crisis that we're in and how it's affected us politically, socially, economically, in every single way, how it affects every single avenue of our lives, every single nook and cranny. There isn't any aspect of our lives that is untouched by this character crisis. Only recently have we begun to realize how important it is to turn this around. And only recently have we begun to start talking about these issues that matter so much. That character really does matter after all. In a way, I think that nature has a way of letting us know when we've gone too far. We inevitably invite most of our own disasters. Most of our own crises are of our own making. The earthquake in Nepal, those once-in-a-century tsunamis, those couple of times a season tornadoes, These things happen, but they're relatively rare. More of the time, we bring upon ourselves untold grief, unnecessary hardship, and we bring that hardship on ourselves out of the hardness of our heart. And our lack of care and concern, not just for our fellow human beings, but for life itself, for the miracle that is life, and for our own long-term welfare. We've become spoiled, entitled, hedonistic, relativistic, morally relativistic brats. And we're paying for it. We're paying for it in every single aspect of our lives. Our families are a mess. Our children are a mess. Our educational system is in shambles for a lot of reasons. But not the least of which is because in so many of our most impoverished schools, nobody comes prepared to learn, not mentally, physically, or emotionally prepared to learn because of what they come out of, the environment they come out of. We have to do better than this. We can do better than this. I'm not saying that we are better than this, because we aren't right now. But we can be. And I'm going to continue to do my part to inspire. I'm going to keep writing a blog article every single week on manipulative-people.com about character and dealing with the character crisis and how mental health professionals should deal with the issue, address the issue, how to get help when you need it, warning signs to look for when you're thinking about getting into a relationship, how to mend if you've been in a toxic relationship. I'll keep writing about it. I'll keep promoting my books, In Sheep's Clothing, and Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, and the Judas Syndrome. For those of you in the Christian faith community, I urge you, read the Judas Syndrome. I want to stir your heart. So if you have a mind to at least try, get it on Amazon, download it. It's reasonably priced. I hope it touches you. And I'll try and do it in song. With the song you're about to hear as we close on the bumper for this evening, America, My Home. Remember that it's all about character. That's what preserves our freedom. I hope to get more requests from people who want to carry the message at their patriotic events as the holiday season rolls up, becomes closer. For Memorial Day, Flag Day, 4th of July. Listen, be inspired, join the cause. And I'll be away next week, so I won't be live, but I'll see you the week after on Character Matters. Thank you and good night.